Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over the Grayscale trusts and Bitcoin. So with that being said, let's get it. Okay, so Bitcoin is going to be relatively quick. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this because we covered this already recently, but you guys can see a golden cross here on the 4-hour time frame. This could potentially signal a early reversal here on the price of Bitcoin. If I go over the daily time frame, you guys can see the histogram is slowly turning a lighter shade of red, and it looks like we might be about ready to have another golden cross here, well under the zero level, which is a very bullish sign. Okay, that also indicates potential reversal. You can see a large wick here and also here, kind of off the bottom of this flag pattern. If this truly is the swing low like last time, as you guys can see, the move should be pretty large, I would think. I mean, this last move here was 27%. The wick low that we got here at the start of the flag was also pretty large. It was about 24%. So if we get anything like that, theoretically, let's say from the wick low, we get, your average 27%, we should be back up at 68,000, still ranging within this flag, which means likely the grayscale trusts are going to fly much higher. Plus, we also have this double oversold signal here, and also a slight bullish divergence. For those of you guys that don't know what that is, that's when the price is going lower and the indicators are going higher. In this case, the RSI is going higher and the price is going lower. So that's a potential early bullish reversal sign. Okay, so one more thing I want to talk about, this CPI. We've already gone over this, but I'm going to make this quick. So CPI is coming out this Thursday. By the time you guys see this, it will basically be tomorrow. So again, CPI comes out at 5:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're on the East Coast, like New York, Florida, stuff like that. If you're on the West Coast, it would be at, it would be at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It would be at 5:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So adjust your time clock based on your time zone accordingly, if you're interested. But as you guys can see here, it comes out at 5:30 a.m. Obviously, we're on the West Coast. So core inflation year over year is expected to be the same. It would be nice to see a drop. And the other one that we're looking at here, jobless claims, that also matters, but I don't think that matters nearly as much as inflation, because inflation is going to, in my opinion, have the bigger weighting as to whether the Fed's going to cut or not. So headline inflation is expected to drop 0.2 percentage points. If that happens, we could theoretically see a big rip in the markets and in crypto. So do keep in mind that Thursday will bring some serious volatility to the markets. Plus, Powell, if I'm not mistaken, is supposed to testify in front of both the House and the Senate this week. So that could also bring some major volatility to the markets. Let's hope that the volatility is bullish volatility, okay? So LTCN, you guys can see that we're still riding this trend line. So pretty much the same thing I said prior. So if it gets a break of the trend line, we're looking at 13 to about 15 as support. This trend line, I would say, once again, somewhere between $17 to about $18. Your resistance is 24 to roughly about 27. And then we have our swing high all the way up here at 54. So let's pop down to the lower time frame, take a look and see if we're getting some kind of reversal here. So you can see it's right in this trend line. Once again, this did happen before for a little while before we eventually started making higher highs and higher lows and then ripping to the upside. So we kind of want to see something similar happen, where it kind of just maybe does something like this. So it kind of bobs around. Then we get like a little bump to the upside, then a higher low, then a higher high, then a higher low, and then woo, all the way up to the moon, right? That's kind of, we want to see basically something like that. So pretty much what we would be looking at in terms of measurements right now from this trend line, let's say to the top of this first resistance, would be about a 52% gain. And then up to this previous high up here is 200%. So above and beyond this swing high, we're looking at roughly about 75, 100 to 135, and then 300 to 400, somewhere in there, before eventually hitting the all-time high at 510. So if I were to measure this again, but this time from the support zone, assuming the bearish case scenario, up to this resistance, 93%, and then up to the swing high here, roughly about 288%. So we did have a golden cross down here. It is below the zero level, which generally speaking is a very bullish sign. Something I do want to point out here, and this is not a guarantee that price has to go higher. Okay, this is just kind of an early signal saying, hey, we might be about ready to flip bullish. So price moving down, and then the RSI is now slowly moving up. Okay. So that basically, in short, is bullish divergence. That means that potentially a bull move could be coming right around the corner. So we'll take a look at BCHG. So right off the bat, I can already tell pretty much immediately the same thing. So we have a bullish divergence here, price going down, RSI moving up on the daily time frame. We also have an earlier golden cross, as you guys can see a little while ago. So late June. That was pretty much right along the bottoms as well. The MACD is pretty notorious for nailing the bottom, or pretty much close to the bottom on lower time frames, and even higher time frames in some cases. So now we'll go over to the weekly time frame. So we're pretty far away from overbought territory. I mean, this thing could theoretically rip from this point if it wanted to. Of course, the MACDs could just come down to the 0 level, break even, still stay within the bull territory, which is above the break even level, and then rip back to the upside. That is common in trading and investing. So it does appear to be holding these candle lows down here at about $8. That could be a pickup point if that's something you were looking at. I would still say it could potentially even wick down and come down to about 680 to about 760 down there in that support, or it could just come down to it, and we'll just have to wait and see. Still below the EMAs, so that's not great. Still below resistance, although we did get above this support now. We're retesting at this point. So kind of a mixed bag on the weekly time frame. In terms of resistance, you basically got $10 to $12.60, 18 to 20, and then the swing high appears at 24. So I'll give you guys the max profit scenario here for the swing moves. From current price to swing high is 163% move. If it comes down to $8, let's say, trying to get this exact, it's hard to do it on the higher time frames though. All the way to the swing high would be roughly about 200%, and then let's just say it goes down to the red EMA, all the way to the swing high would then be about 227%. So still pretty good move in my opinion. That's more than double your money. So HZEN, this thing is looking very bullish. That's a hammer candle, not exactly a hammer candle, but pretty much more or less a hammer candle. Nice bounce off of this support here. It is still within a falling wedge, which is a bullish pattern. The target for the wedge is the top of the wedge, so 1050 at that swing high. So current support 390 to about 420 on the support zone. First resistance 680 to $8, and then 1050. And if we were to whack our head against the top of this wedge this week, it would be at roughly around 615. So just plan your positions accordingly based on what you think is the right thing to do with your own money, of course. So from the support zone to the top of the first resistance move, 100%. And then from the support zone all the way up to the swing high up here, 163% move. Just so you all know, the underline is also rocketing. Horizon is rocketing. I mean, Bitcoin was up just a minute ago, but it's not going to... I mean, usually when there's a reversal of some kind, whether it's a reverse to the downside or it's a move to the upside, there is some kind of battle that takes place between the bulls and the bears. It does generally chop around a little bit, known as accumulation or distribution, before it eventually reverses the trend. So don't be surprised if that happens. But yeah, for whatever reason, I don't know why. I'm going to have to look into this, but Horizon itself is just moonshotting. I don't know what's going on here. So this thing is just turning into an absolute beast. Maybe it's some news catalyst or something. So ETCG, we're still above this line here. The thing I want to point out is that this candle close was below these candle closes, and it was also below this line here on this channel. So in my opinion, I think likely even if this green candle closes above here, it could potentially still go down to the support. Again, that support is going to be about $8.80 to $10. I have not heard anything on the spot Ether ETFs yet. I'll have to update you guys that as I become aware of what's going on. But for resistance zones, we're looking at 13 and a quarter to about 1590, 1760, all the way up to about $20. So just from the current price, let's say to the top of the first range, 41%, to the swing high, 74%, top of the second range, 80%. And then let's assume it gets back down into support somewhere around here. Pretty much right at the bottom of this candle wick right here, as you guys can see, all the way up to the first resistance, 67%, swing high, 106%, and then the top of that top resistance zone there, 114%. So ETH, I'm not really surprised. I mean, this was kind of looking like a double top. It did turn out to be a double top. I told y'all that I thought it was likely going to come back down to support unless they listed the actual spot ETFs, which I have not seen yet, and it did. So 25 to 29% on the support there. The only kicker here is that we do have a cup and handle pattern. Okay, so big, huge cup here, and then the handle, and then a massive, crazy green candle breakout here. Once again, the target is up at the highs at $47. How the price gets to that target exactly is anybody's guess. I cannot tell you, but that is the target. So in terms of resistance, that's going to be $41 to $47, almost $48. So again, that target is within that range. If I just measure it from the current price, let's say to the top of the range, 66% move. And even from the bottom of support all the way to the top of the range, 89 to about 90% move. And again, it even if it was just going to hit this target and come back down, it could possibly even wick up to the top of this range, then hit the target, then close right around the target, and then maybe retest for a retest of support, and then take off to the upside for a new high. That would not be all that shocking. So Phil G, I've already told you guys my stance on this one. So inverse head and shoulders pattern here. The target is up here at $300. Then you have your swing high at $395. I'll give you guys an updated Fibonacci retracement, like macro max targets video at some point in the future. It's just not going to be this one. So as you guys can see, so we have these lows on these candles, and we did get a lower low. So likely it's going to possibly stop at 57, but in my opinion, I think it's more likely to come down to the support. Usually when you get a candle lower than the previous low here, that's a bearish sign. So 37 to about 40 on that low there. And the reason I say this is more likely because you guys can see this this level right here on these lows wasn't really even tested. There's no real candle closes here. The only price action that was traded here was this wick. That's about it. Whereas this was resistance in the previous bear market, and then it flipped into support, and it was tested here. So you guys can see why I'm saying that would be the zone that I would be looking for. But to each their own. Maybe it doesn't come down there. I don't know. I just am speculating that I think it probably will. So inverse head and shoulders target, 650%. And the swing high up here, or I should say the all-time high, roughly about 890%. So GBAT, we're kind of testing the bottom of this support here. Again, this was resistance back here, tested as support. It actually took off as support and then tested again as support, and now it's testing yet again as support. So whether it breaks down or breaks out, that remains to be seen, but the current support is going to be $7.80 to roughly about $10. If we get a breakout, we need to get above these highs here, so about $18, and then once we do that, our next target would be roughly about 32 all the way at the top there. So the measured move from roughly about the current price to the high up there, 258% move. If you wanted to get a little more picture perfect because you're a perfectionist and you just have to get the absolute bottom, I'm not sure if that's even possible, but you'd be looking at about 302% move there. So GLIV, this one also does look like it wants to pull back more. I'll get into that in a minute. So inverse head and shoulders pattern here, as you guys can see, it didn't break out like I thought it would as fast as I would like to see it. But if we get that, the target would ultimately be $84. The all-time high is at 80. Support down here is going to be about 1150 to 15, which I think is likely to happen unless for whatever reason Bitcoin pulls back even further after CPI later this week, which could happen. The technicals do kind of tell me that likely it is probably going to go back down to support here. So we got this candle close here below these lows, and then an even lower one here. So the next stop would be kind of testing somewhere around these wicks. So roughly about 1750, maybe all the way down to 15 at the top of support. But it could come anywhere down in that support zone before eventually ripping to the upside. So from the support all the way to the all-time high is 493%. I actually just remembered, I told you guys before that I was going to tell you what I thought was going to happen at the end of the year for Bitcoin. So let me go over that real quick before I forget. So pretty much what I think is going to happen for Bitcoin, and I know this is going to sound crazy, okay? This is going to sound like you guys are probably going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? So we're probably going to see something similar to what we saw in 2021, okay? So we have this huge rip. You can see a huge rip, right? We get a retest of the, basically in this case, it would be the secondary trend line. So you can see we got our primary one here for the big rip and then a secondary one right here, right? So we get some kind of retest of the secondary trend line, then we kind of bob around, and then Bitcoin goes to all-time highs right around the end of the year, okay? And then we get our alt season like sometime between the end of this year to roughly about, I'd say somewhere around Q2 of next year. And it's actually possible we might even get a third peak. Okay, I know this sounds crazy, but again, if you think about what happened in 2020, okay, so the Fed was raising rates into the pandemic, and Trump came out and said, "No, nope, you got to cut rates." So then they cut rates, and they cut rates at such a fast pace, like it was unprecedented how fast they cut rates. They basically went to zero overnight. Okay, that the market literally tanked 40% in like a month. Okay, it's crazy. But my guess is the Fed could potentially hold rates where they are. Unemployment goes up, okay, like not fast, but like a little bit month over month. Things start to look kind of shaky in the economy. Trump gets reelected in November. Then Trump basically tells the Fed, like, hey, Fed, you either need to cut rates or you're fired. I'm going to hire somebody else. And then they slam the rates back down to zero relatively quickly, and we could see some kind of major crash, okay, like 40, 50% crash, kind of like during the pandemic back here. And then we get a massive rip when the stimulus comes in, just like when we saw what we saw in March of 2020. That is a possibility. If that does not happen, then likely we will probably hit all-time highs on Bitcoin and a lot of Bitcoin-related things towards the end of the year, and then get alt season roughly around Q1, Q2 of next year. So I forgot to tell you all that in the previous video, but that's pretty much what my thesis is on that, okay? And Trump has already come out and said that he wanted to potentially fire Powell. So you already know he's clearly doing something that Trump doesn't like. And we know that Trump knows how to run an economy. I don't think I need to say much more about that. So 66 to 84% on support on G-Link here. All-time high at 220. Again, it could potentially just bounce here at 85. I mean, that's the last time we had a bounce. So it's up to you guys where you want to get in here, or if you want to get in at all. If you don't, you don't have to. That's the great thing about being an investor. You have lots of choices. So 200% move on this one. So GSAW, this thing does once again look very bullish. Personally, I would not touch it with a 10-foot pole because it has not had a major pullback in a long time. I'd be looking to get in on a major pullback, not all the way up here near all-time highs, but the measured move from current price to the high is 28%, whereas the measured move from the current price all the way down to this support is a massive 62% drop, which could happen. I mean, people probably think it can't, like, oh yeah, it's never going to go down. Guys, I'm telling y'all right now, I've been through a bull and a bear cycle, a full one in crypto. All I can say is expect the unexpected. You just simply don't know what's going to happen. Okay. Nobody foresaw Mt. Gox coming out and selling all their Bitcoin, right? Especially not at this time frame. So 165 to 201 on support there. So if it pulls back from that support, goes to the swing high, which again is at 580, it's a 215% move. GXLM, again, we are getting kind of a series of lower lows here. So a low, another low, and yet another low here. So I suspect, and this was also a rising wedge. It was kind of a channel, but it looks more like a rising wedge. So I'm not really surprised it had a breakdown, but of course it had this fake out and then this pump fake to the downside. This line, in my opinion, $25, these candle lows, that's going to be your support. It could go lower, no guarantees that it won't. That support is 5 to 1150. I don't think it goes that low unless we hit some kind of major black swan event or This truly is a bear market, which I don't think it is, but from that level to the swing high up here, which is at 70, is a 172% move. Mana is sitting perfectly on the flip zone, as you guys can see. Previous resistance turned support. So again, that zone is from $17.50 to $20. The previous all-time high is at 70. As you guys can see, it's pretty good risk reward from a trading perspective. But whether you guys are looking for like a 10, 20, 30x, I mean, this is not going to be a 10, 20, 30x. You might have to run the risk of holding a little bit longer until we eventually do hit the end of the year. So, and even then, it's not a guarantee. I mean, if the Fed cuts rates, we could go into a recession because the yield curve inverts, and that's historically what happens when it does. But it's entirely up to you. I'm just throwing out the possibilities here, okay? So 250% move or 257% move on Mana. Zcash, so this one did have a perfect bounce, essentially, off of this line that we talked about. So I can't say yet that this is support, but it is above the trend line, as you guys can see. So we'll just say 440 to 510 would be the current buy zone. Resistance 8 to roughly about 970, and then 10.25 at the swing high up there. So from the current move to the top of resistance is roughly about 102%, and then all the way up to the wick high up here is 116% move, as you guys can see. It does also need to get past this kind of flat top here, as you guys can see, roughly around that 650 level. So do keep an eye out on that. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.